In this part, we get a lot of Sasuke's character development. If you're wondering if he leaves the village or not, this is like the part which is very important to that decision that he's gonna make. Like the video, comment, Q, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get into the video. Roll the intro. Naruto had flashed to his apartment and immediately disassembled his backpack. After taking a very satisfying hot water shower in his bathroom, he cooked himself fish, rice, and eggs. Preservative seals were oh so awesome. After he finished his meal, he sat on the couch and put on a movie. He wondered what to do. After finishing an 8th rank mission, it was mandatory for a shinobi to at least take 1 week off leave, maximum 2 weeks. However, Naruto knew he was quickly going to get bored of doing nothing for a week straight. He mentally reconnected what he couldn't do. He was in no mood to work on seals right now. Training was out of the question because he had just returned from a mission. He had nothing to read and he had no video games, for he was firm of the belief of they rot your mind. "You're sure you're acting like a brat right now, you know?" came the voice from within. Naruto rolled his eyes. "Not all of us can sleep on a whim like you, Kurama. You're sleeping almost all the time when you have nothing to do." Naruto heard a scoff. "Whatever, brat. What I want to say is you could seek your pineapple-headed friend for a game of shogi. Good exercise for your feeble human mind." Naruto ignored the insult as he thought about the suggestion. It was not a bad at all. He would have fun teasing Shikamaru about his added duties as well. He got up from the couch and went to his room to get changed. A minute later, he emerged in something casual. A dirty white long-sleeve shirt folded to his elbows with dark blue jeans. Over the t-shirt, he wore a black shirt with bottom open, sleeves folded till elbows. The necklace Tsunade had given him hung out of his shirt. All in all, he looked as cool as a breeze. He stepped outside of his building and began a slow walk, having located the chakra signature of his friend in the training ground 10. He allowed his feet to carry him as he thought about the possible changes that could happen now that Tsunade was back. On this way back, Jiraiya had once told him that Tsunade had once asked Sarutobi permission to start a medic training program. However, it was wartime and there weren't enough shinobi to spare for the training program, not to mention the lack of interest in the part of many shinobi. So lost he was in his thoughts that he failed to notice the appreciative looks from the female population that were being sent in his direction. Girls were 8 to 9 years old were blushing while looking at him, while the girls his age were shamelessly checking him out. But again, he was too lost in his thought to really notice that. He was about to turn towards the training grounds when he sighed. This was getting boring very fast. "Come out, Konohamaru. I won't tell you a second time." As soon as he shouted, a brown-haired boy darted around the corner and came running over to him. "Naruto Nichan, play ninja with me?" That earned him a harsh finger flick, right in the center of the forehead. Konohamaru yelped, immediately rubbing the spot. Naruto looked at his unofficial charge with some amusement. Konohamaru wanting to play ninja with him was a common request by now, but since today was a day on which Naruto had nothing to do, why not give a few life lessons to the kid, teach him the real meaning of being a ninja? Konohamaru was immediately indignant. "What was that for?" "I won't be playing ninja with you today, Konohamaru," came the bored reply. Then he frowned. "Also, aren't you supposed to be in the academy right now?" Indeed, it was only noon right now, so the young Sarutobi should have been having lunch in his class. Konohamaru crossed his arms and pouted. "Iruka Sensei's lessons are so boring." Naruto let out a small chuckle. "You aren't wrong in saying that." However, his face adopted a stern expression. "That excuse is not enough for you to skip class. They are teaching you things that will allow you to survive as a shinobi. Even I found those classes dreadfully boring, but I always followed what was going on." No need to tell the kid that he skipped quite a few classes himself because of his stupidity act. Of course, he had also been way ahead of his class. Also, you should start training seriously instead of playing ninja in your free time. It is never too early for a shinobi to start training on chakra control. Konohamaru frowned. Does this mean you will no longer play ninja with me? Naruto sighed, trying to decide how to best explain this. He looked around, thoughts running wild, when he spotted the Hokage monument. An idea sprang into his head, and without giving any warning to the kid, he grabbed his shoulder and flashed away. Konohamaru blinked when he suddenly found himself standing over the head of the Yondaime. He shrieked and backed off, only to collide with something solid. Turning back, he saw the face of Naruto, looking over the village. Being a ninja is not a game, Konohamaru, Naruto said softly, looking into the eyes of his charge. Sure, kids can play, but in the world that we grew up, it is best not to treat it as a game. He sat down, pulling the kid down with him. Konohamaru sat beside his idol and frowned, not understanding what Naruto was trying to say. What do you mean, Naruto Nichan? Naruto did not look away from the village. Let me ask you something, Konohamaru. What do you think it means to be a shinobi? Konohamaru opened his mouth to answer, and then stopped. He thought really hard, something he very rarely did. It was obviously a question that he had a deep answer. He thought and thought, but the answer was lost to him. To be a shinobi means to endure. A shinobi is the one who can follow or lead others into any darkness and work together to overcome that darkness and make it out the other side. A shinobi walks towards danger when everyone else is running away. That is because it is the duty of a shinobi to look at any foe and say, "Bring it." This is because shinobi exists to protect those who can't protect themselves. Naruto recited the same answer that Gigi had given him years ago. The answer had a deep and profound effect on him. It was one of the main reasons he pushed himself so hard every day to get strong, so he could protect his loved ones. He hoped it would have the same effect on Konohamaru. The said boy was deeply thinking about Naruto's answer. He had never thought about it like that, always thinking it was a game. That being a shinobi meant to throw cool jutsus around. He had never imagined there would be such a deep reason behind what being a shinobi meant. Only one thing came to his mind right now. Why are you telling me this? Your grandfather almost lost his life in the invasion. The words were like a splash of cold water down Konohamaru's spine. The announcement filled him with a dread, which was visible in a violent shiver on the outside. What? How? Naruto gave an expressionless look to the boy. He acted like a true shinobi. I told you, didn't I? Being a shinobi is not a game. A Hokage is less so. Konohamaru viciously tried to hold back his tears upon hearing the news of his grandfather. He had never known about this. Why was Naruto Nichan telling him all of this? To teach you a lesson, came the answer, almost as if Naruto had read his thoughts. I'm telling you this to teach you a lesson, Konohamaru. You want to become Hokage, don't you? At the mention of his ultimate goal, Konohamaru hastily wiped his tears off. Yeah. Naruto stood up, brushing his pants. Then start taking your training seriously. Not too much though. Take ample time to rest and relax, so your body can appropriately recover as well. Eat healthy food in ample amounts, without hesitating. Just don't joke around when it comes to your duties as a shinobi, alright? Konohamaru stood at attention, determination coursing through him. Yes, Naruto Nichan. Naruto smiled and ruffled the boy's hair. Good. And if you need any help on how to properly train, don't hesitate to ask. Become a shinobi first, then I'll tell you what it means to be Hokage. Alright? Konohamaru smiled and nodded. He would make his brother and grandfather proud of him by becoming a true shinobi. Yes, Naruto Nichan, but don't you forget this. He pointed a finger at the blonde challengingly. We're still rivals for Hokage. Naruto chuckled. That's the spirit. Now let's get you back to the academy. He put a hand on Konohamaru's shoulder and flashed to the only person in the academy who had his Hiraishin seal on him. Iruka sat annoyed at his desk as the lunch hour slowly came at an end. He had finished his lunch in the first 15 minutes and spent the rest of the hour thinking about the latest menace of his class, the grandson of the Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Konohamaru. The boy almost always made trouble for him, even more so than what Naruto did while he was in the academy. One would think that Iruka would have some experience in dealing with troublesome kids like Konohamaru, because having the resident prankster of Konoha as a former student. But no. Just as the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch hour, he almost fell on his back while sitting in his chair when two people appeared so suddenly in front of him. After recollecting himself, his eyes widened when he recognized the two people. The short one was easy because it was his rampant student who had ditched class because he was too bored. The other one took a moment because Iruka had never seen Naruto look so cool. Naruto smiled and greeted his former teacher, brother figure. It had been a very long time since he had talked to Iruka. "How's it going, Iruka-sensei?" "Well, if it isn't Naruto." Iruka was very pleasantly surprised to see his former favorite student. It had really been a long time for both of them. "Iruka-sensei, I'm just here to return Konohamaru in your care," Naruto gestured to his young shinobi in making. He was looking all kinds of depressed at being stuck in Iruka's boring lectures. Of course, sudden appearance of strangers was bound to attract the students' attention, who began to excitedly chatter. Naruto took note of this and gave an apologetic smile to Iruka. "We'll talk later, okay, Iruka-sensei? I won't be disturbing your class anymore than they already are." With that, he vanished in a blue flash, leaving a dumbfounded Iruka to wonder that since when was Naruto capable of doing something like that. Naruto peered back at the head of his father. Suddenly, he didn't feel like doing anything at all. Deciding to rest for a while, he laid down, using his jacket to cover his face from the sun rays. Maybe he would just laze around today. As he drifted off, he absently wondered, what if this is what Shikamaru felt every day. Sakura was humming the tune of her favorite song as she walked into Sasuke's hospital room. She had been doing daily checkups on Kakashi and Sasuke. Of course, that is not to say that she was still a hardcore fangirl. She had ditched those ways long ago, thanks to her blonde teammate. She still pinned after him, hoping that he would someday accept her love. Over the course of the past few weeks, she had ample time to train and visit her sensei and teammate. Though she missed the presence of Naruto, Team 7 had almost become a second family to her, and that family was incomplete, which left her feeling incomplete. She had gone to the Sunday many times during the blonde's absence to inquire when Naruto would return. The Hokage's answer had been the same every time, that Naruto was away on a very important mission for the village. Every time she had returned home unsatisfied with his answer. She continued her visits to Kakashi and Sasuke, hoping at least one of them would wake up and talk back to her. On that note, she had noticed something strange between Naruto and Sasuke. Ever since the second phase of the Chunin exams, Naruto had become a little more cautious when he was around Sasuke. It was understandable, given how Sasuke had viciously attacked him back in the forest. But Sasuke deserved the benefit of doubt, given the strange energy that had been coursing through him. What Sakura hadn't realized that she had unintentionally used the curse seal as an excuse for what went wrong for Sasuke. While the situation in the forest certainly put the blame on the curse mark correctly, she wouldn't realize until it would be too late that she would slowly but steadily start blaming every aspect of Sasuke's negative behavior on the curse mark. She opened the door to Sasuke's room. She frowned when she saw two people that she didn't recognize. One was a white-haired man, rather tall and looked to be around 50 years old, leaning against the wall of the room with his arms crossed. Looking at the room's second strange occupant, she was a woman who looked to be in her late 20s, with her blonde hair in two pigtails over a green jacket with the kanji for gambler written on it. The woman was holding her hands near Sasuke's head, a green glow emanating from her hands which Sakura recognized to be medical chakra. "Always mind your surroundings, Sakura," came a voice from behind. She spun around, eyes widened on being startled like that. Naruto was leaning on the side of the door, such that anyone opening the door would see him last. She put her hands on her chest, breathing heavily as she recovered from the shock. Earlier, she would have just punched him in the head for scaring her like that, but Naruto had made it pretty clear how he felt about that before their bell test. "Don't scare me like that, Naruto," she said, her heartbeat now back to normal. Naruto shrugged and started eating an apple that he pulled out from somewhere. "You should not drop your guard when entering a room," he advised, while happily munching on the juicy apple. Nevertheless, she smiled and said, "It is good to have you back, Naruto." Naruto smirked and merely nodded in reply, his mouth full of apples. She then turned to the woman, but smiled wide when she saw that Sasuke was groggily waking up. She ran over to hug him, thoughts of other occupants in the room fleeing her mind. Naruto shook his head in mild disappointment as he finished his apple. He didn't understand why Sakura pinned after the Uchiha so much when he didn't even reciprocate. Okay, I'm gonna get this. Reciprocate, I think. Her feelings. He tossed the remains of the apple into the dustbin and walked over to the bed. Now that pretty boy here is awake, I'd like to introduce some people. Sasuke glared at Naruto for his choice of words. To his credit, the blonde ignored him entirely. Sakura thankfully released him from the constraining hug and turned to him, confusion swinging in her green eyes. Naruto waved towards Jiraiya. "He's Jiraiya of the Sannin, the Totate from Mount Miyaboku, and don't you start." The last part was said harshly to the white-haired man, who was about to start another one of his kabuki dances. "You ruined my introduction, Naruto." "No, you do that quite spectacularly yourself," Naruto muttered to himself before coughing into his fist. Turning to Sakura, she had wide eyes as she looked upon one of the most powerful ninja in the entire world. "It is an honor to meet you, Jiraiya-sama." Jiraiya grinned at the respect he was given, not hearing Naruto's mutters. "Trust me, it's not." Naruto turned to Sakura around with a hand on her shoulder, ignoring her protest of how she wanted to talk more to him. Naruto waved her protest away. "Don't worry, you'll be seeing a lot more of him in the future. Trust me on that." Sakura frowned disapprovingly at Naruto, but before she could voice it, Naruto introduced her to the woman in the room. This lady here is Senju Tsunade, the slug Sannin and the one who woke Sasuke up from his coma. Sakura instantly had stars in her eyes as she was introduced to the strongest Konoichi in the elemental nations and the idol of all Konoichis in Konoha. "Tsunade-sama," she hurriedly bowed. "It is such an honor to meet you." She did not raise her head after the bow in the name of respect, though she was confused when Tsunade-sama suddenly spoke to Naruto. "See that, brat? This is how you show respect to someone like me." Naruto snorted derisively. "Whatever you say, Granny." Only because she was in a hospital did she not punch the brat through the walls. While this was going on, Jiraiya was restraining his snickers. Sakura was berating Naruto for disrespecting a Sannin, and Sasuke was blankly looking at the bickering between his teammates and the ridiculously busty woman. Seriously, look at the size of that. His hands would not even cover half. "She is also our next Hokage," Naruto's voice broke Sasuke out of his rare, once-in-a-while perverted thought. Thankfully, no one had seen him gazing at the assets of the Senju Tsunade. Sakura frowned as she looked at the enormous bust of the blonde woman with slight jealousy. Then she half-consciously looked at her own chest. Her chest was nothing compared to that bust, and she doubted it ever would. Then she backpedaled. Wait, what do you mean next Hokage?" Naruto elaborated. "Sandaime-sama had sent me an Erosen in here." He pointed to the indigenous sage. "To retrieve her," she pointed to the annoyed blonde, "to become the next Hokage when he steps down. Also, I brought her back so she could heal Sasuke and Kakashi." He turned to Sasuke. "You're welcome, by the way." Sasuke glared at the slightly smirking blonde. He was acting too cocky for his liking. He looked down at his hands, hating the weakness he was feeling right now. He clenched his fist as he thought about just how he ended up in a hospital. Tsunade sighed and turned to Naruto. "I need to see you in the Hokage's office. The first thing tomorrow morning, Naruto." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Is it a new mission for me?" Tsunade mentally smirked. "Oh, it's a mission, alright." Outwardly, she said, "You can think of it as a long-term mission." Naruto looked perplexed for a moment, then recovered, going back to his bored look. "I just recently became a jonin, you know. Wouldn't a long-term mission be more suited for someone with a little more experience than me in the field?" Tsunade caved his worries away as she walked to the door. "You wouldn't know how to handle a long-term mission even if you don't try. Besides, this mission is especially for you. Only you can do it." With those words, Tsunade left the room. Jiraiya coughed and walked towards the window, perching on the window sill. He turned and grinned at his apprentice. Yo, Naruto, I'll leave you with your team to catch up a bit. I have research to take care of. With that, he was gone. Awkward silence regained for a few moments, as neither of them could figure out what to say. Sakura was the first to break the silence with a nervous chuckle. So, Naruto, can you tell us about your recent mission? Sasuke's head snapped up, remembering a piece of the conversation when Tsunade was in the room. You're going with a Sannin, right? You were gone with a Sannin, right? Naruto's bored expression betrayed nothing, but inside he was curious. What would Sasuke bring that piece of the conversation? Yeah, actually, though he's nothing like you can imagine, I assure you. In fact, both the Sannin are nothing like you are probably thinking. Naruto smirked in a lazy way. Sakura was confused. What do you mean? Naruto chuckled as he stood up to leave. It's definitely not my place to say. You know how it is. Whether you learn on a S-rank mission is what you learn on an S-rank mission is confidential information, reserved only for the Hokage. No need to tell them that he knew that Jiraiya was a pervert long before they went on the mission. Also, he had noticed that Sasuke was showing signs of irritation that Sakura hadn't managed to notice, twitching off his left eye, clenching of his fist as if a dam was waiting to burst. He figured it was best if he and Sakura left. He had a feeling that whatever was going on Sasuke's head, it was not good. Perhaps we should leave Sasuke to rest, Sakura, he said in a tone that was more of an order than a suggestion. Fortunately, there were very few bits and pieces of fangirl left in Sakura to rebel against them. Sakura looked like she didn't want to leave her crush alone, but a look from Naruto made her decision. With one last look to Sasuke, who was looking down, seemingly lost in his thoughts, she walked out of the room. She looked behind her to see that Naruto had walked out behind her and closed the door. It's best if we leave him to his thoughts for a while. He has a lot to think about with his encounter with his brother, was the offered explanation with a look that told her to keep quiet about this. Sakura's eyes widened, but Naruto's ushered her away. Naruto closed the door and locked it with a subtle click. He turned to look at Sasuke, who had looked up to lock eyes with him. The Shadow Clone had sent out with Sakura to keep her away from the conversation they were both about to have. Naruto walked and closed the windows, pulling the curtains over. He pressed his hands to the wall and seals erupted from it, spreading in a graceful pattern. After ensuring no one would eavesdrop on their conversation, he pulled a chair and sat down beside Sasuke's bed. Thank you. Naruto raised an eyebrow. It was rare for the Uchiha to initiate a conversation, even rarer for him to say such words. For what? For sending her away. She was beginning to get on my nerves, came the blank reply, but Naruto picked up the slight traces of annoyance. Both of them remained quiet for a while, lost in their thoughts, until Naruto spoke. It was rather commendable of you not to lose yourself back there, Naruto said with a tone of acknowledgement. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Did you get dumber or what? If I hadn't, I wouldn't be here right now. Naruto shook his head slightly. I'm not talking about your action. I'm talking about the hit on your neck. Its power is quite addictive, usually activated in the situations that you faced a few weeks ago. Very impressive that you did not. I don't know if I can say that. I'll probably just blur it out. Sasuke grunted, not knowing how to reply to that. Silence descended upon them again, and this time Sasuke broke it first. Back then, he began, causing Naruto to raise his head. I discovered just how much distance is between me and my brother. Naruto took careful note of the fact that Sasuke didn't sound angry, scornful at all. The tone was entirely blank, like he was simply stating a fact, and that worried him. The Sasuke Naruto knew would be burning with desire for revenge in this situation. He would have done anything to get out of here, to bridge the gap between him and his brother by any means. Naruto knew Sasuke to be highly impulsive when it came to matters concerning his brother. Itachi was a name that rose the adrenaline levels in Sasuke's faster than being in a fight. He wasn't allowed any more time to think because Sasuke's next question snapped him from his thoughts. Why was Itachi looking for you? Sasuke stared Naruto dead in the eyes, the kind of eyes that put Naruto on edge. Naruto carefully considered on how to answer. After all, this was Itachi they were talking about. You'll find your answer if you remember the conversation we had before I left for my mission, Sasuke. He's after the Kyuubi then. Naruto was surprised on the inside at how quickly Sasuke was able to connect the dots, but the surprise did not appear on his bored facade. He just nodded silently in reply. not just the QB. Sasuke raised an eyebrow in question, but Naruto shook his head, clearly implying that he would not talk anymore on the subject. I'm starting to think this village can't help become as powerful as my brother. Can't help me become as powerful as my brother. It was a mere mumble, something only meant for Sasuke ears alone. But coupled with the silence of the room and Naruto's animalistic hearing, it was not discreet at all. For the first time in a long time, Naruto could honestly say that he was truly shocked. He had just heard Sasuke contemplating on leaving the village, just to get more powerful, faster than what he was getting now. Sasuke was already a flight risk, but that was now nearing an edge that Naruto couldn't afford to tip. He had to stop this now. Everyone become powerful on their own pace, Sasuke. If you continue to forcefully push beyond the absolute limit, it will only result in burnout. Naruto leaned forward, and Sasuke froze when he looked into Naruto's eyes. They were frigid, freezing him in place, for he could not tear away his own. They reminded him of his brother's eye, the same cold, detached, ruthless eyes. You think this village should only cater to you and your needs? The question was clearly rhetorical, and was spoken barely above a whisper, but it was spoken with so much menace that Sasuke could not stop the shiver that violently passed through his body. Naruto to Sasuke had always been a laid-back guy who owned the words serious when the situation called for it. But this was a totally new side of the blonde that he was seeing right now. Make no mistake, Sasuke. The moment you put on the headband, the Okage became the only person whose orders you have to ultimately follow. You now belong to the leaf before you belong to the clan. Every clan in Konoha obeys this rule. I don't see why you think you are an exception. Naruto's posture was very relaxed. He was leaning back in his chair, left ankle over right knee, elbow on the armrest, chin resting on hands, mouth hidden and only eyes visible. Yet there was something in the air around him that screamed of danger. Your brother was a gem, Sasuke, a one of a kind. People might hail you as a genius, but even a genius has classes. Your genius cannot be compared to your brother's. Itachi's level of genius is something that only occurs once in many generations. If you think you can progress at the same speed that your brother did, you're dead wrong. Sasuke finally found his voice, and it quivered with rage. Are you saying I'll never be able to kill my brother? Naruto's answer was short and precise, conveying exactly what he needed and nothing more. Just now, perhaps in a few years. Just not now, perhaps in a few years. Sasuke's rage only grew at the nonchalance of the answer. He hated when he wasn't taken serious. Naruto stood up and walked over to the wall, laying his palm flat on it and disabling the seal on them. He turned to Sasuke, who looked only an inch away from snarling. I would stop the train of thought if I were you, Sasuke. Abandoning the village would give you nothing but a kill-on-sight order, he advised, causing Sasuke's rage to subside moderately, the Uchiha staring back at his hands with a blank gaze. Naruto turned back to Sasuke, causing the Uchiha to do a double take at the pleasant smile that adorned his face. It was as if he was back to his normal self, the previous second becoming a different person entirely. Well, Sasuke, get well soon, Naruto wished, and was about to open the door to exit. If someone asked when he went back into Sasuke's room, he would just say that he forgot something and came to take it back. Naruto! The call stopped his hand on the handle. Removing it, he turned around and gave a questioning look to his former teammate. I thought that was Sakura, that's why I did the whole voice. What would you do if I were to just run away? Naruto had to give credit to Sasuke to threaten his deserting so openly. Instead of answering the question, Naruto asked one of his own. You formed bonds when we were teammates, Sasuke. Bonds that were similar to the family that you once had. Ask yourself this. Would you be willing to lose those bonds like those a second time? Based on the widening of his eyes, Sasuke was totally unprepared for the question. Naruto made him realize just what Team 7 was to him now, making him doubt himself whether he could sever the bonds to just get revenge. Both their eyes snapped to the door when there was a click of the handle. Before the door started opening, Naruto whispered to Sasuke, "Remember your friends, Sasuke." He was gone in a flash. The door swinging in the space where he was but a moment ago. A nurse appeared, looking concerned. Are you alright, Sasuke-san? I heard voices from your room. "I was just talking to myself. Nothing to worry about," he assured the nurse. The nurse nodded and left, keeping the door open this time. Sasuke was still thinking about how Naruto had just outright threatened him. Not just that, but he had made it very clear that he was a very dangerous person. Sasuke hadn't even imagined or even dreamed that Naruto, of all people, had it in him to do that. Naruto made it clear that he would kill Sasuke if he had to protect Konoha. Sasuke glanced down in thought. He thought back to the conversation he had with Naruto before the blonde left for his mission. Naruto had bonds in this village, which he wanted to protect at all costs. Was that why he was so strong? Is that why he himself was not becoming as strong as he wanted to? Because he had nothing to protect? "You have your friends," a part of his mind whispered at him. Sasuke frowned when he couldn't make sense out of his thoughts. One part of his mind whispered to him sweetly, saying that this village was only holding him back. Orochimaru had given him a way to get stronger, so he should take it. Another part of his mind said that he should remain in the village, grow stronger with his friends. He had already lost too many people. Was he ready to lose more because of his desire for revenge, or should he focus on revenge only? He didn't know which path to choose. And that's where I'm gonna end it, guys. I hope you've all enjoyed. Get this to 500 likes for the next part, and I'll see you all in the next part. Roll the outro.
Wanted a bitch who was on the move, but you want a goddamn like. Got that one in my bed and she just wanna sleep. Fucking up all of the sheets. She only wake up to eat. Do this shit every week. Like, why you do that? Crying, you wanna be great, but sleeping until the next day. Why you do that? Got that much in the bank. We go out, she order the steak. Why you do that?